What if I told you that the most powerful force in your life isn't something out in the universe, but something sitting quietly inside your own mind right now? And the strange part is, you've been using it your entire life without fully realizing how powerful it actually is. Richard Feynman, one of the most brilliant physicists in history, had a very unusual belief. He didn't think intelligence was about being born a genius. He believed something far more interesting, that the ability to understand the world deeply is something anyone can develop, if they learn how to look at things the right way. And that includes you. Let me show you what he meant. Imagine you're holding a simple glass of water. Nothing special, right? Just water. But Feynman would look at that same glass and see something completely different. He'd see billions upon billions of tiny molecules, all bouncing around, colliding, vibrating, moving in patterns so complex that they create something that looks calm and still to your eyes. Inside that quiet glass, there's chaos, motion, energy. Now here's the twist. That ability to see deeper than what's on the surface, that's not reserved for scientists. That's a way of thinking. And once you start using it, everything changes. Most people go through life accepting things as they are. The sky is blue, the ground is solid, time just moves forward. But Feynman had this habit of asking simple questions that most people ignore. Why is the sky blue? What does solid really mean? What is time, actually? And the moment you start asking those questions, something strange happens. The world stops being obvious and starts becoming mysterious again. Take something as simple as touching a table. It feels solid, firm, real. But if you zoom in far enough, you'd see that the atoms in your hand and the atoms in the table never actually touch. They repel each other with electromagnetic forces. What you feel as touch is really an invisible interaction between fields. In a very real sense, you've never truly touched anything in your life. Pause and think about that for a second. This is what Feynman meant when he said that reality is far more fascinating than we usually allow ourselves to see. And here's where it gets important for you. Because the same mindset that lets someone understand the universe is the same mindset that can completely transform how you see yourself. Most people have this quiet belief in their head. I'm just not that smart. Or I'm not the kind of person who understands complex things. And once that belief settles in, it becomes invisible. You stop questioning it. You just live inside it. But Feynman would challenge that immediately. He believed that confusion isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you're right at the edge of understanding something new. In fact, he once said that he felt more comfortable not knowing things than having answers that might be wrong. Think about how different that is from how most people learn. In school, you're rewarded for having the right answers. But real understanding doesn't come from memorizing answers. It comes from wrestling with questions. Let's do a quick thought experiment. Imagine you're trying to explain how electricity works. Not with technical words, not with formulas, just in simple language. Could you do it? Most people can't. And that's exactly the point. Feynman had this personal rule. If he couldn't explain something in simple terms, he didn't truly understand it yet. So he would go back, break it down, rebuild it in his own mind until it became clear. That process, that's where real intelligence comes from. Not from knowing more, but from understanding better. And here's the part most people miss. You can do this too. Your brain isn't fixed. It's not locked into some permanent level of ability. It's more like a muscle. The more you challenge it, the more connections it builds. The more questions you ask, the sharper it becomes. Think about learning a new skill, like riding a bike. At first it feels impossible. You wobble, you fall, nothing makes sense. But your brain is quietly adjusting, learning, adapting, and then suddenly, it clicks. Understanding works the same way. The only difference is that instead of falling off a bike, you're falling into confusion. And most people give up right there. They step back and say, this isn't for me. But what if that moment of confusion is actually the moment you're closest to a breakthrough? Feynman embraced that feeling. He chased it because he knew that on the other side of confusion there's clarity. Let's go deeper. There's a concept in physics called uncertainty. At the smallest levels of reality, you can't know everything with perfect precision. The more accurately you know one thing, the less accurately you can know another. It's not a limitation of your tools. It's a fundamental property of the universe. Now think about how that connects to your life. You don't need perfect clarity to move forward. You don't need to have everything figured out. In fact, waiting for certainty might be the very thing holding you back. The universe itself operates with uncertainty, and still manages to create galaxies, stars, life. So maybe your uncertainty isn't a weakness. Maybe it's just part of the process. Feynman didn't see himself as special. He saw himself as curious, relentlessly curious. He would take things apart, play with ideas, explore questions just for the joy of understanding. And that playful curiosity, that's something you already have. Think back to when you were a kid. You probably asked questions non-stop. Why is this? How does that work? What happens if I do this? You weren't worried about being wrong. You were exploring. Somewhere along the way, most people lose that. They start worrying about looking smart instead of becoming smart. They stop asking questions because they're afraid of not knowing. But here's the truth. Not knowing is where everything begins. Every discovery, every invention, every breakthrough in history started with someone saying, "I don't understand this, but I want to." And that desire to understand, that's the real power. You don't need to be a genius to think like Feynman. You just need to be willing to slow down, question things, and build your understanding from the ground up. Instead of memorizing, try explaining. Instead of accepting, try questioning. Instead of avoiding confusion, try leaning into it. Because the moment you do that, you stop being a passive observer of the world and start becoming an active explorer of it. And here's the most exciting part. The more you understand the world, the more you start to realize something incredible, that you are part of it. The same laws of physics that govern stars and galaxies are at work inside you. The atoms in your body were forged in ancient stars. The energy flowing through your brain is part of the same universe you're trying to understand. You're not separate from it. You're made of it. And when you begin to truly understand even a small piece of how things work, you're connecting with something much bigger than yourself. That's what Feynman saw. Not just equations or theories, but a deep, almost poetic connection between curiosity and reality. So the next time you think, "I'm not smart enough," pause for a second and ask yourself, have I really tried to understand this? Have I broken it down? Have I questioned it? Have I explored it? Or did I just decide too early that it wasn't for me? Because chances are you're capable of far more than you think. You just haven't trained your mind to see it yet. And once you do, the world doesn't just become clearer. It becomes more beautiful, more mysterious, more alive. So stay curious. Ask better questions. Don't be afraid to not know. Because the more you embrace that feeling, the closer you get to real understanding. And maybe, just maybe, the person you're becoming is far greater than the one you thought you were. If this made you think a little differently, hit like, subscribe for more ideas like this, and tell me in the comments, what's one question about the world you've always wanted to understand? Because that question might be the beginning of something much bigger than you realize.